Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan and Anakin. 2 masters, 2 apprentices, 1 enemy. Who are the followers of the Sith? Devoted to the study of the dark side of the Force, they live an underground existence. But their threat is growing. Although they do not have Sith power, they are on a constant search for it. Nothing, not even the Jedi, will get in their way. Dr. Lundi is the leader of the Sith followers. As he gets closer to attaining a Sith holocron, he comes face to face with Qui-Gon Jinn and his apprentice, Obi-Wan. 10 years later, when the Sith followers reappear, Obi-Wan and his own apprentice, Anakin Skywalker, must rely on Lundi to help them, but he is to be feared, not trusted. The Sith are on the rise. The Jedi must stop them. Padawan Library.
Whoa.
Levi's a piece of shit. Tim's great. Let's go.
Whoa.
We were having a huge argument. This is done. I'm just done. I'm fucking so pissed. Let's start over.
No, keep going. Keep going.
This is bad.
All right, this is Padawan Library. This is the Star Wars Junior Novel Podcast. I'm Levi. This is Tim. We were just having a fiery discussion over a newish released movie. You may have heard of it, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Tim thinks it's a 5-star movie. I think it's probably 4, maybe 3.5 stars. But this is a Star Wars podcast. We won't get into it on here, but
and you've been hiding it. That's what's so annoying. If you just were honest and weren't a scared person about everything. Ugh. Anyway, okay, let's just move on. Our audience has no clue what we're talking about. Okay, so
they don't know anything about this wide release movie.
Well, I'm not saying they don't know what the movie is, but whatever.
Okay. All right. This week we are reviewing Jedi Apprentice Special Edition, The Followers. This is the conclusion, the supposed conclusion to Jedi Apprentice. We'll find out about that. But other things we have to talk about because, like every Star Wars related podcast, we have to discuss this. The D23 footage, Tim.
Okay. Yeah. Well, all right. The Mandolorian. Let's start there.
Yes, that's.
You've really killed my enthusiasm. I should never have asked you about this right before the episode. Oh my god!
I said we should have been recording. It was so fiery. People are going to be like, "Whoa, what did we miss?"
This whatever. It's just you are such a. You decide your opinions on movies based on what me and one other person we know think, and that's just the fact of the matter.
I knew that
is the fact. You decide to either like it a little more or a little less. I could tell just from
the time the movie was announced, I was just like, why is he doing this Manson Sharon Tate thing? I don't think he should be doing this. And
you are terrible. You like The Hateful Eight. That's his most offensive movie. You are a freak. I don't even understand what you're talking about. Let's just go. Anyway, let's just please move on.
All right, The Mandalorian. Okay, the Mandalorian looks cool.
It looks great. I can't wait.
It looks
Twilight is cool. Werner Herzog. There's not really much to say. It looks really good.
Right. I think I saw some Death
Troopers in there. This is going to be unlistenable. We should really just start over.
No, we are 3 minutes into this. We are doing this.
This is a disaster. Okay.
All right, we'll talk about the cool things. People frozen in carbonite. That was fun.
That looks cool.
The assassin droid who looks like IG-88, who I think is actually named IG-11. That looked awesome.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I Carl Weathers. That's cool.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty excited about it. I think there's, I think a lot of people. I'm just excited. There's something that'll be after Return of the Jedi that they'll fill that in for the new canon a little bit. I'm excited for the talent behind the scenes, Dave Filoni and Taika Waititi, and
Bryce Dallas Howard. That'll be interesting.
Yeah, her first thing, but that's interesting. I'm happy. They're I don't know. It looks cool. I'm glad it's coming out weekly. I think that's cool.
Mm-hmm. We'll probably talk about it every week, so that'll be something to look forward to. So
that'll be something we can know what we're doing in the opening segment. For the most part,
and that'll
cool.
And then we'll have it'll go right into Last Jedi. We all of November, all of December, we do not have to worry about the opening discussion at all because there's just so much happening.
That's true. There's just too much stuff.
Right.
All right.
When's Triple?
I mean, we could also just talk about how you're wrong about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood every opening segment for the rest of the fucking podcast. Honestly, this is just
somebody will agree with me. Take. Everybody agrees with me.
I'm sure plenty of people agree with you, but for you of all people, whatever. You are whatever. Okay. It's just there are other people that I would accept this take from, you not. But anyway,
I'm not saying I've soured on him, but I just don't love him anymore. And that's the last thing I've really loved was Inglourious Bastards.
You just said you liked Hateful Eight more than this.
Hateful Eight is better than this. Hateful Eight
was
amazing.
That's an insane take.
No,
whatever. That's legitimately insane, but okay.
No, it's
whatever.
not.
And this movie is easily his best movie since Bastards. You're a crazy person. Okay, so God damn it.
Bastards
the Rise of Skywalker footage. There's basically nothing to fucking talk about here. Everybody that's freaking out about Rey being evil, needs to chill. She's not going to be. Whatever. It's probably a dream sequence or a vision or something.
Let's backtrack a little bit before the footage. Let's talk about this poster. I know everybody has talked about this poster. I don't like this poster. This poster looks like...
poster.
It looks like a bad book cover. It's not...
It's compositionally it's fine. The idea behind it is fine. The problem is that Sheev looks stupid on the poster. Honestly, if Sheev was in a little more darkness and it was just a slightly different expression on his face, I think it would probably be a fine poster. But it's...
Would you see the theory that that picture of Sheev is a doll? It's the Hot Toys 12-inch doll.
Yeah, you sent
Sheev.
me something about that.
Yeah, I saw that pop up again. It's not even a photo from the movie; it's a damn toy.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
What is that? But anyway, now the footage. You know what? Let's talk about this lightsaber because everybody seems to love this lightsaber too. And this lightsaber,
I've seen
I think it's
but
so
anger
dumb
about this.
Oh, good, because I haven't. Because everybody was so angry about Kylo Ren's lightsaber, and this thing makes Kylo Ren's lightsaber look like, I don't know, Einstein built it or something. It's like Kylo Ren's lightsaber is at least. I was trying to think of something that would just make his lightsaber seem like perfection or something, like a very smart tool. Whereas this dumb Rey lightsaber, how does she even hold it? When it's folded in half, it's.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't care
you know what? I don't care. This movie, we'll see it. I don't know.
I'm worried
about it. There's not much to talk about here. I'm not that... Yeah. I'm worried about it, but I was worried about it before this, and nothing in this made me more worried. I just don't, It's just, whatever. Mm-hmm. Some of the images are cool. Some of them, I don't... I like that one, I think, is kind of corny and, fanboy-y, but... whatever. I don't know. This... D23, whatever. The Star Wars stuff... I mean, Mandalorian was easily the thing I was more excited about. Although, again, it's just a trailer. There's not really any new real information coming out of that trailer. But it looks cool. I don't know. I'm excited about both of them. Really, let's be honest. Like, I'm gonna. We'll talk about this movie. Hopefully, we'll get a real trailer in the near future. Like the intro, like the whole connecting it to the other movies, like it's like actually connected to those movies, is so goofy, and I've just never bought into that as a conceit for selling this movie, and I think it's a mistake for them to try to position it as the end of all the movies as opposed to just the end of these movies. I think it sets expectations too high.
Too high, yeah. It's way too high. And like you're also claiming that you're ending like the story that George Lucas started in 1977. No, George finished that story. You've just added like the extra coda to the end of it that wasn't done by the original composer. Like your story is its own thing. Treat it like its own thing.
Yeah, I agree.
It feels oddly revisionist. and did you see what they did with they have renamed episode 4, 5, and 6? Like they're just going to call them Star Wars: A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, no, I've seen that. That's, whatever.
Whatever.
That's what they were called when they came out, to be fair. But I just, I think that's weird for Disney to do. They rename their shit all the time. But anyway, I don't know. D23 is a weird thing. Like, now it's so strange because it's just so much different shit that really isn't, like, part of the same...
It's
doesn't
not
appeal
Disney.
to all the same people. I don't know. Like, it appeals to the same people, I guess, because I like all that stuff. But it's like, if I go to a Disney convention, I would rather, like, see stuff about, Disney movies, not Star Wars and Marvel. But that's just me.
That's
we
all it
live in a
was.
stupid media landscape. Anyway,
I have a new Sheev theory from this footage. You know how there's the shot of all of the Empire era Star Destroyers?
Yeah, that's a cool shot.
Yeah, it is. What if Sheev has cloned himself, but like made himself into an army? Like he's cloned himself the whole time. Like he is just everybody on board. He's doing like every job all at once. He's just he's his own army. That's my new theory.
That is something
outlandish.
I would hate. So I hope
Would be
that's
so
not
bad.
I would hate that more than your Once Upon a Time in Hollywood take, honestly. I can't even we didn't even actually get into it. That's why I'm so mad, because we don't even actually know what each other think of the movie really, in reality. Although I hear the hints in some of your comments that are just, I'm already pissed. Like, I feel like you didn't think about the movie in any way at all, but whatever, that's fine.
It's a fine, well-made movie. There's great moments, but like...
Yeah, like just... every moment of it that exists. Yeah, I agree. Great moments. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we'll get into it one time, eventually.
If you don't think this movie respects Sharon Tate, you're a fucking Philistine.
Well, okay, that's one thing I do. Like, it does do that, because the fact that they when she goes to the movie theater, they didn't put Margot Robbie in the footage.
That's like one of the greatest. Her performance is incredible. Whatever, you're wrong about everything. Okay.
That's the only thing she does in the damn movie is sit there in the damn movie theater.
You have the dumbest take. You're counting lines like a Philistine right now.
But
I don't care. Okay. The scene where she picks up the hippie on the side of the road, she's like not a fucking Quentin Tarantino character. That's why it's good. Like she's an actual person. The other characters are stylized around her, and she's like a real person in the middle of this, and the fictional characters save the real person. That's the whole fucking thematic point of the movie, about how fiction can enrich actual life. Whatever. Okay. Let's move on.
It's also now going to be the same. Well, like, let's say you go into this, like, if you were like one of these losers who like went and saw Inglourious Bastards and like knew nothing about Hitler and thought like Hitler died in a theater. If you know nothing about Sharon Tate and like Charles Manson,
I'm sorry, are we supposed to make movies for fucking idiots now? Who cares?
I guess not.
Who cares if you go to see a movie that involves the Manson if you don't know what the Manson murders are, that like the most famous crime of the last 100 years, I don't know what to tell you.
But it's
like, I don't know what... That's the dumbest argument I've seen. You're parroting stupid arguments again. Okay, let's fucking move on. Okay. This is... Okay, I'm sorry to our listeners. We're getting very hot. I'm just... You know,
they're going to enjoy
whatever.
this. They're going to love this.
They're not going to enjoy this. This feels... I don't know. Whatever. Okay. You know, I wish you see, this wouldn't have happened if you hadn't just hidden this. We'd have had this argument ourselves, just on our own time.
Well, that's true. I probably should have, but I just, like...
You are hiding. The deception here is what's infuriating.
You just... All because I didn't log it on Letterboxd. This is what
you
happened.
You didn't log it on Letterboxd, and you logged a bunch of other stuff, and I'm like, huh, he didn't see that yet. That's weird. That's weird he wouldn't see that. That's a wide release.
I logged Ernest Goes to Jail. That was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun with Ernest Goes to Jail.
Oh, God. I want to throw up right now.
Right. And I just logged Francis Ha again.
That's a great movie. I love that movie. You don't need to fucking argue about that movie. I saw that movie and recommended you that movie. In the fucking first place. You actually gave
me that movie, I'm pretty sure, for Christmas.
I might have. That's a great movie. Yeah. Thank God. You like some good movies.
Oh, you made me fucking watch Winter's Tale.
That's a fucking joke! That's a joke movie! Are you putting that on par with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood right now?
No, I'm not. I'm just bringing out personal gripe being that you hyped Winter's Tale to no fucking end.
It's fucking hilarious! He calls the horse horse!
$3.
That movie is
$3 at a half-price books to buy this damn movie.
$3!
The horse thing is the only funny thing in the movie. The movie's just boring.
There's a million funny things in the movie. Will Smith is the fucking devil in that movie.
Well, that's also something else I like. Very weird about the movie is like never. We won't.
Why are we talking about Winter's Tale? This opening segment is a disaster.
About my Letterboxd.
We need to move on.
All right, special edition episode.
All right, 2. Guys. Let's bring it back to Star Wars and bring it back to D23. Okay, listen. Me and Levi agree on this podcast all the time, so the heat of that argument might be surprising to you. But I promise you, we argue about things like this all the time, and we are fine, and we're still friends.
Yes, we are. We certainly
are. We had a huge blow-up about Dick Tracy a couple months ago.
Yes, we did.
Very similar, honestly, to this bullshit Once Upon a Time in Hollywood tape.
You overrate the fuck out of Dick Tracy.
Dick Tracy's a fucking masterpiece. All hail Warren Beatty. Anyway, so,
There's also an infamous argument between us over Rocky, over the
and you've completely come around to my side, by the way.
Well, I finally rewatched all the Rockies, so
whatever. We don't need to talk about Rocky. So
all right.
Anyway, D23 stuff. Obviously, we're both pumped for the Mandalorian, and I think we're both excited for Rise of Skywalker. But the trepidation remains even after the footage, perhaps enriched for you by the footage. Okay, we need to calm down in the break here, and before we talk about this book, because I don't want this to hang over the whole episode.
There's no way it can hang. Well, funny thing, we'll reveal this now that you have not finished the book yet, and we're only recording half of it now, and then we're going to record the other half tomorrow when you finish the book. So I'm sure tomorrow we will be way more relaxed.
Yeah, I'm sure. Probably, I guess. I'll just be super tired. But it's fine. Okay. So,
when we come back,
Jedi Apprentice, Special Edition, number 2. The Followers. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Padawan Library, where hopefully we're very calm. We talk... maybe I just screamed it out. I don't know. I'm sorry, Levi, again.
I'm sorry too for getting you fired up.
Yeah, okay.
During the break, the conversation continued during the break, and it got heated again. So we're coming down from that heat. We're cooling off,
I hope I am cooling off. Oh God.
Yeah, we are.
You distracted me so much. I barely even am thinking about this book right now. This is a problem.
Well, pull out your notes.
My notes are here. I got my notes in front of me. The Followers, Think
about you're in the temple.
And also, this has to be a good episode. This is the last Jedi Apprentice book.
I know.
I feel like I fucked it up by bringing up that movie right before the recording, because I was like, oh, he hasn't seen that yet. Oh, I should remind him to go see that or something. And then you're like, oh, I saw it. It didn't, it's not 5 stars or whatever. And it's just like, it set me off. I'm sorry. It should not have set me off. It's just an opinion about a movie. It's just a movie that made me very emotional. And that's all I want to tell the audience, that I really, whether you have the personal reaction to it or not, I did. And, I'm not like some sort of Tarantino fanboy. I do like most of the movies.
Oh, my lord.
But, I'm not like some sort of, freak about this stuff. I don't but, I don't know, this movie just, it touched a deep nerve in me, and so I overreacted to one of my close friends dismissing it so out of hand, and I apologize to him and to the audience for my overreaction. Okay? Is that
all right?
Is that it?
All
Can
right.
we move on? I feel like I just wanted to say something.
You won't let it go.
I'm letting it go.
Silent.
I was being such an asshole, but I also I don't regret any specific thing I said. My tone was too harsh, and I'm really sorry. Oh,
okay. I have nothing to say about the cover of the book this week.
Okay. There's not much about the cover. I'm so okay. This guy, I like the look of the we'll find out about the character who this is. He looks a little Thrawn-ish, the villain.
Mm-hmm, he certainly does.
On the cover, I don't really imagine him that way in the book. We've got, a younger looking Hayden there. You got, he's still got the young Obi-Wan model. Even though he's 18, he looks about the same as he does on the Rising Force cover.
He certainly does. His hair is a little dark.
What are you gonna do? I'm just laughing because this episode is a fucking disaster.
It's not technically our last Jedi Apprentice episode.
I know, but I feel bad. I feel bad for our listeners. Okay.
And
we don't really have enough time to just go back and re-record, so it is what it is. So, I'll start us off here. Chapter 1 of The Followers. The Jedi Council is ordered that Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan are to contact Bant and her new master, Kit Fisto.
Ooh,
very cool. First real appearance by
fitting.
Kit Fisto in the series. And Qui-Gon has kept kind of an eye on Bant since her old master and his old flame, Tall, died a couple of years earlier. Although it later says a few months earlier. Whatever. The timeline is what it is. But Obi-Wan's now 18 years old, by the way. So Kit Fisto says that Bant has told him so much about Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. So apparently this is Kit Fisto and Qui-Gon's first meeting? Do you get that sense?
Yeah, that's how I read it.
Okay, that's cool. Anyway, since they're speaking to Bant and Kit over the Hollow, on where they are on the planet Korriban, interesting. Qui-Gon thought this must be something routine, but he took one look at Bant's face, and it told him otherwise. And I'm going to read a little bit here from pages 2, 3, 4, and 5. I know, it's a lot. But then I have a bunch of other stuff to summarize afterwards, so I'm not being lazy. Relax. Everyone needs to relax. I'm relaxing myself by saying everyone needs to relax. I'm not talking about it you so much as myself.
Think about the cool waters of the room of 1,000 fountains.
God, I wish. It's very hot in this room where I am right now. Okay, so that might have contributed to my mood. I'm sorry. Okay. The Sith. Qui-Gon had heard stories about the Sith since he was a young boy. Every generation of initiates at the temple knew Sith stories and legends. They thrilled in telling them to one another late at night when they should have been sleeping. Qui-Gon's generation had been no exception. Although the stories were terrifying enough to have kept young Qui-Gon awake on more than a few nights, he had always felt they were largely invented, myths designed to scare and not inform. Even after studying Sith history and learning that the Sith had existed and had been powerful, Qui-Gon remained skeptical. But his recent conversation with Jedi Master Kit Fisto forced Qui-Gon to re-examine his beliefs about the Sith. "Master, do you believe..." Qui-Gon hesitated. "Do I believe in the Sith?" Qui-Gon finished his apprentice question before answering it. Clearly, Kit Fisto's report had opened up questions for Obi-Wan as well. "Of course I do. You and I have both studied their history enough to know that the Sith threat was once very real. But we also know that they were a culture and that could not survive. They killed themselves off long ago. The question remaining is whether or not they pose a current threat." Now it was Qui-Gon who hesitated. "How can they pose a threat if they no longer exist?" Obi-Wan asked. "The danger lies not in the Sith themselves, but in their teachings, and the ability of those teachings to inspire others to evil. As long as the Sith teachings survive, there is potential threat." "And if someone is spreading those teachings?" Obi-Wan trailed off. Qui-Gon knew he must be thinking about what Kit Fisto and Bant had found on Korriban. How could he forget the look of terror on Bant's face as she described the horrors she and her master had seen in the valley, or Kit Fisto's dark eyes as he told them about the dwelling they had found, and its chilling contents. Inside the crude shack were tomes of Sith lore and models of ancient Sith weapons. It appeared that someone had been compiling every scrap of information to be found about the Sith, both true and myth, and scrawled on one wall was a crude drawing of a Sith holocron beside a message written in Sith code, "Location known, follow the leader." A simple holocron was not necessarily dangerous. The crystal information storage devices were even used by the Jedi. Palm-sized and easy to transport, holocrons were an excellent way to store vast amounts of knowledge. But the Jedi holocrons that Qui-Gon had seen were square. The holocron drawing on Korriban was pyramid-shaped, a formation unique to the Sith, and the knowledge contained in a Sith holocron was infinitely more dangerous. It focused on dark power and how to gain, use, and manipulate it. If one existed, and if it fell into the wrong hands, a Sith holocron could be more than deadly. So there you go. There's the MacGuffin of the book. We got a Sith holocron. So
this is exciting.
Very exciting. So Jocasta Nu is giving Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon the briefing on their mission, and she says that there are several Sith sects all around the galaxy, but most of them don't really amount to much more than small-time gains with kind of fancy philosophy. However, a popular historian who teaches at a university on Coruscant named Murc Lundi has in recent years been focusing his research on the history of the dark side of the Force. His classes are very popular, and his work can be hard to get as a result. Some of his books were found on Korriban, amongst all that stuff. So, was this one of Professor Lundy's students behind this discovery? We don't know. First, though, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan will have to learn all about the Sith.
What? Somebody's teaching the teens on campus about the Sith?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, this is a problem. The Jedi need to put a stop to this right now. So, Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon go to the college to attend one of Professor Lundy's lectures. When they get there, they're shocked, if not surprised, by the number of students who are in attendance. When Lundy arrives, which, by the way, he's a Quirmane, which is the same species as Yarrow Proof, Jedi Master Yarrow Proof, who in the old canon had died between Episode 1 and Episode 2. The reason he died is because George did not want him in the movie so he would not be confused with a Kaminoan.
Okay.
Anyway, so he walks into the room. He's got like a red device on his one eye, and he starts to teach the class. He silences the class, and he starts to teach them about the Sith. And Obi, he's watching this, and he compares Lindy's teaching methods to the teachers he had at the temple. The temple teachers taught students like they were partners, working together, helping students to seek knowledge for themselves. But Lundy, he's this preachy type. He shouts his opinions all day, and all the students just do is listen. But Obi-Wan, he looks around, There's not a tired eye in the class. Everyone is hooked of what this guy is saying. And Obi can see why. The way Lundi tells stories of the Sith are being told way better than the ghost stories he heard as a kid at the temple. Obi also notices there are 4 students in the front row who seem to be drinking Lundi's Kool-Aid a little more than the others. One of them we find out is named Norval because he interrupts Lundi during the lecture. And Norval straight up asks Lundi, "Were the Sith more powerful than the Jedi? Huh?" And Lundi's like, "Oh, but of course, because vengeance and anger is far more powerful than the pursuit of peace." What? These kids, they're warped for life because of this man. The class runs out of time, and Lundi announces there will be no class next week because he's going on sabbatical, and it looks like the Jedi will be taking a little sabbatical of their own.
Shit. So, I didn't plan the reading. I didn't plan this because I planned to read that whole section I read earlier, in my notes anyway. But reading that really did successfully calm me down. I'm totally in the book now.
Oh, good.
So good for Jude. Her prose is that good. It completely distracted me from
really
my nonsense. So,
and I just saw a rabbit run by my window. So like the calm is here. The storm is over.
Here. I hear, well, there's police sirens too, but, it is what it is. So, Chapter 3, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, they follow Professor Lundi out of class and all the way to kind of oh, jeez, that's loud. I hope you guys didn't hear that. Okay, I'm sorry. Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan follow Professor Lundi out of class all the way to transport dock, and since they don't know, and they get... They see Professor Lundi getting onto a kind of a junky transport, and they don't know where it's going, so they have no choice but to follow him on board. And the captain tries to make them pay double for passage on the transport, but Qui-Gon mind tricks him back down to a normal price. And the ship is headed to LaSalle, which sounds familiar to Qui-Gon, but he can't really put a finger on it. But he scans around for Professor Lundi, and he can't spot him right away. Before the ship's about to take off, Norval, the sycophantic boy from class, shows up, pounding on the door, screaming after the professor, "You can't open it by yourself! You're too old and frail!" And whatnot, all that kind of stuff. So, Professor Lundi orders the guards to remove this boy. Super cold, because this is his favorite student or whatever. So, maybe Professor Lundi is really pretty Sith, is pretty embedded in this Sith philosophy. So Qui-Gon now suspects that Lundi is going to try to open a Sith holocron because of what the kid said. You can't open it yourself. You're too old and frail. So he thinks he's after a holocron. So
this is bad news. So they find an abandoned laundry room to go hang out in so Lundi doesn't see them. They call the temple, they talk to Yoda, and Yoda's like, "Hey, you guys were right to follow him. If he's searching for the holocron, then that means the Jedi must find it first. And luckily, we could use Lundi to lead us straight to it." So Obi's being all impatient. He wants answers, so he finds a worker's jumpsuit in the dirty laundry, and it fits him. And Qui-Gon's like, "Hey, calm down. It's a 2-day journey. Let's let Lundi relax. Let's get some sleep." So in the middle of the night, Obi-Wan, he finally dozes off, but then there's a disturbance in the Force. He looks around the room. Qui-Gon is still sleeping. Whatever it was didn't bother Qui-Gon. So he looks around, there's nothing. So he settles that it wasn't in the laundry, but Obi-Wan cannot shake this feeling that, oh man, our cover must be blown. So he meditates and hoping to figure out what disturbed him. And when he awakes again, Qui-Gon is up, and he says they must figure out where where the ship is going. So they both put on the jumpsuits they found, the dirty jumpsuits, and Qui-Gon's is hilariously short on his legs. It comes up to his shins, and he has to roll up his sleeves so he doesn't look so silly. He still looks silly, but I mean he's a large man. He thinks
tall.
that Lundi may be it may be in his private quarters, but the two of them should split up and cover more ground. Obi-Wan heads for the bridge, and surprise, surprise, Lundi is there with the captain, and he successfully bribes the captain into taking them to Nolar, the planet Nolar, rather than Lizal. We're changing course, Tim.
Indeed. So the ship lands on Nolar, and Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan follow Lundi. Soon they realize they are also being followed, and Qui-Gon continues after Lundi, and Obi-Wan goes off in a different direction to fool their pursuer. So after some deliberation, the assailant does ultimately follow Obi-Wan. And I'm just going to read one paragraph here, because it ties into a running theme that we've been tracking. Relieved, Obi-Wan moved ahead. He zigzagged through a crowded marketplace, barely pausing to look at the delectable fruits and vegetables sold at various stands. Several vendors called out to him, aggressively trying to sell their foods. Obi-Wan's stomach growled. Unfortunately, there was no time for a snack.
Not only did Jude cover the fact that Obi-Wan is
still very hungry.
but she let us know what the market
18,
on the planet
your
was
body's
like.
still growing. Even if you're not getting taller, know that, kids, that you're still growing. So treat it well. Don't abuse your body. So don't stunt your growth with terrible things like fruits and vegetables. After a bit, Obi-Wan turns a corner and bumps into a group of goons who are all immediately hostile towards him. Obi-Wan's trying to figure out if the goons had been at Lundi's lecture, but when Qui-Gon kind of starts to grab his lightsaber to possibly defend himself, one of them notices and says,
"Ah, a lightsaber! But does he use it wisely for power and vengeance, or foolishly for peace?"
So, this sentiment echoes the end of Lundi's lecture, and they start shooting at him, and he defends himself. He gets a minor shoulder wound and slices one dude's finger off. But by the time he does shake the goons, Obi-Wan has lost track of the person following them. So he walks past So he's kind of like, okay, let me go find Qui-Gon. He walks past a warehouse, and he senses Qui-Gon's presence and ducks in. Lundi is also in there, and he's trying to buy a Nolarian 6000 drill. Right now, man. Today. I need that drill now. So, the merchant informs him that there's a shortage, and some regulations will prevent him from having one in stock for a while. Lundi is pissed. He's Sithed it up. And on page 33, he hears some of his Sith-style dialogue. We get,
"Pathetic weakling,"
he raged.
"Only a fool would let such technicalities interrupt his business."
So, he's a shithead. So he leaves, ultimately, and Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan follow him out. But once they get to the street, Lundi has disappeared.
So he's gone, but they notice a third cloaked figure leaves the warehouse. So they go pursue him, but it only leads down to a dead-end alleyway. The person's gone. Qui-Gon's looking around, hoping there's a trapdoor. They can't find anything. Frustrated by this mission, Obi-Wan throws a bit of a tantrum, and Qui-Gon has to put him in check. Control that anger, boy, or it's going to land you on the dark side. Ashamed of his outburst, Obi-Wan, he calms down, and they decide that they should head back to the hangar, and if they're lucky, they can catch the pilot that Lundi commissioned before Lundi can get to wherever that Lundi was going before him. That was a weird phrasing in my notes.
Yeah.
So it happens.
Everything's fine. We're all...
Everything is
I'm
fine, Tim.
deeply embarrassed.
I think this is going to be a firecracker episode.
I think I'm conflating some of the screaming I did off the air. So I don't know what I said on air or off air, and I feel like a jackass. I'm sorry.
You fucking Murc Lundi asshole over here.
Oh, well, I don't take back any of my opinions about the movie, but neither should you, and I'm sorry.
So, I agree, and this we're moving on.
It's a very loopy episode, guys.
It's extremely loopy. They call Yoda, give him the update. Yoda's like, "Oh man, we just got an anonymous tip, and we found a large Sith sect weapons cache on Umgal, and there was also a drawing of a Sith holocron. Watch out, boys!" So they make their way through the crowded marketplace, and Qui-Gon, he turns and notices that he lost Obi-Wan. And then when he turns back around, there's a group of thugs waiting for him. And all of a sudden, there's blaster fire swinging past his head.
Shit. So, Obi-Wan focuses. He deflects a couple blaster bolts, and the fire does eventually stop, but the crowd is still panicking. Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon give up finding their assailant, and they look for an escape route. They make it back to the hangar where the transport they came on was docked. The ship is gone, and the pilot is laying there, knocked out. Another roadblock! The pilot doesn't wake up for another couple of hours. And when he does, he flips out that his ship has been stolen. Qui-Gon informs him that they are Jedi, and they suspect the Quirmian, or Lundi himself, on the ship had stolen it. But, the pilot says, that guy asked me to take him to another specific planet. Why would he knock me out? Why would he get rid of his transport? And then, and Qui-Gon's like, perhaps he wanted to pilot the ship himself. And then he asks him, where was Lundi asking to go? And the pilot answers, the planet Kodai.
So, moving on from there, I was taking some notes and I lost a point in my notes. All right, found it. Chapter 8. They leave the pilot, and he asks them, "Hey, if you see my ship, could you bring it back? That would be great." And Qui-Gon is like, "We'll see what we can do." So they ask around to a dozen pilots for passage to Kodai, and no one wants to go there, but they meet a pilot named Elda, who will take him, but she's only going to drop him off. She's not sticking around there. So, once on board, she asks, "Why is everybody so afraid of Kodai?" And Elda's like, "Hey, if you don't know that, buddy, I'm not going to be the one to tell you." So Qui-Gon's like, "All right, well, I'm going to go call Jocasta Nu." She informs him that Kodai is nearly an entire ocean. Long ago, the ocean swelled, killing almost all the entire inhabitants, and now only a single landmass remains with a few thousand people who are just trying to preserve their way of life. But they're also just waiting for the oceans to swell again and gobble them all up. However, every 10 years, the two moons align, causing the oceans to subside some. So, and guess what? That 10 years just so happens to be tomorrow. Well, that explains Lundi's urgency, but why is everyone afraid to go there? Jocasta also informs them that they found another Sith sect weapons cache. And not only that, there was an explosion on Nubia. No one has claimed responsibility for the explosion, but there was a carving of a Sith holocron on a wall near the explosion. Qui-Gon's like, "Oh, damn, that's terrible. How can this get any worse?" He hangs up his comm. Obi-Wan burst into the room. "There's a bomb on board!" Ah!
So, Qui-Gon immediately goes to work defusing the bomb. He has an image of a Sith... the bomb has an image of a Sith holocron on it. And Elda is kind of suspicious that the Jedi are going to be able to do this, clearly. But after much deliberation about which wire to cut, Qui-Gon eventually figures it out, and with only 1 second to spare, Elda does thank him, and I'm going to read a little bit here on page 55. Back in the hold, Qui-Gon closed his eyes and started to meditate for the second time that day. The planted bomb was something else to consider. Was it meant to kill them, or simply throw them off guard? And who had planted it? It must have been someone who was following them closely, someone who was highly prepared. Not much time had elapsed between the Jedi arranging their travel and their subsequent takeoff. Qui-Gon began to breathe deeply, letting his mind clear and then focus. But something was interfering with his concentration. His Padawan was pacing. Qui-Gon opened an eye. "Why don't you try some meditation?" he asked. Obi-Wan nodded and sat down. Even after he had stopped pacing the room, Qui-Gon could tell he was still agitated. With both eyes open now, he studied his Padawan. Obi-Wan sat cross-legged in a chair with his eyes closed, but his shoulders were tensed, and beneath his eyelids, Qui-Gon could see movement. "Are you all right, Obi-Wan?" Qui-Gon asked softly. Obi-Wan opened his eyes and met his master's gaze. I flipped the page. One-handed page flipping here. Okay. Yes, he said slowly, and then, "Well, I don't know. You were afraid," Qui-Gon stated plainly. A look of shame came over Obi-Wan's face, but he did not deny it. "My heart is full of dread," he admitted. "I wish we were on another mission. Any other mission. I am not sure I have the courage to face the holocron." Qui-Gon leaned toward his apprentice. "You have every right to be afraid," he said quietly. "Allow yourself to feel the fear, really feel it, and then let the emotion go. If it comes back, feel it again, and let it go again. There should be no shame in one's emotions." "I am not at fault if it comes back?" Obi-Wan asked, looking up. "No, Padawan," Qui-Gon replied. We cannot control how we feel, only how we choose to handle our feelings." Appropriate for this episode.
Wow.
A lot of
Jude really brings it full circle.
I can't believe it. Oh, man. See, that's true. We both can feel how we want to feel about the movie, but I shouldn't yell at you about it.
It's not the Jedi way, Tim. It's not the Jedi way.
I again didn't plan this. Can't believe it. A look of true relief crossed Obi-Wan's face, and he smiled slightly. His shoulders relaxed, and he closed his eyes. Qui-Gon could almost see the fear leaving his Padawan. He was glad his advice had provided some relief. Sitting back, he closed his eyes too. He only hoped the advice would work as well for him. Okay, so I thought that beyond the obvious applicability to this episode, I thought that was a pretty big moment for Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. That it was this moment where, because Obi-Wan throughout the whole series has really struggled with fear and how his fear about the evils of the galaxy affect him personally, and Qui-Gon finally putting it that succinctly and talking about okay, you can feel this way, but just control that feeling. You can't control when that feeling comes, but you can control how you react to it. And I thought it was a pretty substantial moment in the series.
I have in my notes the Chapter 9 rules, because that scene is great, and the bomb defusing is also
it is a great little
too.
set piece too. I didn't want to read the whole chapter.
Yeah, I know. We got a lot of book to go to, but that is some very sage advice that will probably help Obi-Wan one day when he too is a master of his own.
And hey, it helped me just now, so I appreciate
it. Did. We've come to peace. We're
Oh god, okay.
We should both meditate on this tonight.
Yeah, well, let's just meditate on the subjective nature of art, and it'll be fine. So, I don't know what is wrong. I'm tired too. That's a big part of it.
Well, we're almost through the first half of the book.
Yeah,
we'll
be taking a break that you won't notice. So the audience. So
right.
Anyway,
well, they'll know a fresher,
10,
chippier Tim. Yes. They land on Kodai, and Elda pieces out. Not sure where to go, they head for the local inn, and when they get there, Qui-Gon asked the boy at the desk, the bellhop, is Dr. Lundi staying here? And this guy is more than willing to give up information on the guest staying at the hotel. He's like, oh, he's staying on the second floor. He's been a fine guest, hasn't bothered anybody, and he hasn't even left his room. He's been here the entire time, hasn't gone anywhere. So the Jedi head up there. They put their ears to the door, hoping they can sense what's going on in the room. No dice. It's another dead end, and Obi-Wan audibly sighs in frustration, but quickly realizing that this anger, he feels the emotion and then just lets it go, exactly like Qui-Gon taught him, and Qui-Gon then congratulates the boy on a job well done. So they decide to hit the streets, get some info from the locals, and the Kodaians.
Yeah, I said Kodaians, whatever.
Kodaians, these names aren't easy. Yes, they aren't exactly warm to the off-worlders. Some run away scared when Obi-Wan asks them questions, and finally Obi-Wan finds a young boy, and this young boy says, go to the cantina and talk to Reese. He's got all the information you need. So they meet Reese, and he's a friendly, grubby drail drinker. Not an ale drinker, a drail drinker.
I like
so
drail.
I guess that's... Drail is really fun. I
See,
like
that.
that. I
want more of that. I hope Jude brings more of that into Jedi Quest. Oh, by the way, I bought a double copy of a Jedi Quest book I already had, and by accident I read the first paragraph of the description. Big mistake. Do not read the backs of those books.
Okay, I will
Huge
not.
spoiler. Just letting you know.
Okay, good to know. I will not push ahead on those. Obi-Wan can smell the drail on his breath when he speaks. And this guy, Reese, he's just like, so I bet you guys are here for that holocron. And they both are like, huh? And he goes, oh, this holocron's very real. It's been here for thousands of years. Many have tried to take it, and many have failed. Some people just can't leave that kind of power alone. Then Obi-Wan, from the corner of his eye, he thinks he sees one of Lundy's students walks in. He recognizes the kid from class. Well, he thinks it's his student, but it's really dim in the cantina. So Obi-Wan gets up to go kind of scope this out, and when he gets up, the kid notices him and makes a run for it right out the door.
Okay, so perhaps Omal is on Kodai trying to avoid debtor's prison on Coruscant. A better way to do that is to file for Chapter 11, bankruptcy.
Ooh.
So, Obi-Wan can't sleep, so he takes a walk while Qui-Gon continues to watch after Lundi. And Obi-Wan sees many Kodaians,
Yes.
watching the tide. He sees them. They're watching the tide get low. Remember, this is this thing that happens every 10 years, and in less than an hour, that every decade low tide will allow them to scavenge briefly for pieces of their own history, and then this makes Obi-Wan think back, and he realizes that is what Lundi meant by getting the timing right, quote unquote. So he'll have a chance. It's so that he'll have a chance at the holocron. He needs to get it at the right time. So Obi-Wan rushes back, and he finds that Lundi escaped while Qui-Gon was talking to Jocasta Nu. What the fuck, Qui-Gon? There's some weird lapse on Qui-Gon's part, but okay. So they have to rely on their feelings to find him, and their feelings lead them to a place where several Kodaians are digging, and they try to shoo the Jedi away, but the Jedi, they ignore them, and when they reach the dig site, they use their cable launchers to begin their descent down into the crevice. And then, about halfway down, someone at the top, or maybe something, we don't know, pulls Obi-Wan's anchor out, and Obi-Wan goes, a-tumbling down in the walls. Go tumbling, tumbling. John Mellencamp references now on this podcast. Let's go. Chapter 3.
All right.
Chapter 12.
Chapter 12. As Obi-Wan falls, Qui-Gon quickly calls on the Force, but he feels so clouded and exhausted. It must be that dark side floating around in this cave. He pushes his Force even harder, and luckily, Obi-Wan's grappling hook catches the wall, and causing Obi-Wan to come to an abrupt stop. Qui-Gon calls out, "Obi, are you alright?" And Obi's like, "I'm fine. I can see the bottom. We're almost there." So Qui-Gon meets him down there, and they descend further into the cave. The floor is porous, and they hear a lightning strike up above, and there's a roar, and the cave begins to fill with water. Oh no, those tides must be rising again. Luckily, though, the water, it stops right around their ankles. So up ahead, they see a body laying in the water. It's Lundi. As they approach, he pulls a blaster on them, but they easily disarm him. He's now a raging lunatic. He claims that he held the holocron, but the Jedi have no idea where it is. The water starts to rise again. It's getting higher, and they decide they better get their asses out, so they grab Lundi. Qui-Gon throws him over his shoulder. Lundi is kicking and screaming the whole time. He's raging on and on about how he held the holocron, and the Jedi don't deserve the power of the holocron. It's meant for him! It's his, Tim! And they reach where they repelled from. However, they only have one cable now, and it's quickly filling up with water. So Obi-Wan has a plan. It's their only option. He's going to climb up the rope, and then at the top he'll throw the other one down, and so Qui-Gon can get out. However, before he can execute this plan, a familiar ship hovers overhead and drops a ladder down. They climb up. Poor Qui-Gon, he's got Lundi on his back. Luckily, Lundi has passed out at this point, but he still has to carry up his weight and Lundi's weight up this ladder. They get inside, and it turns out it's Elda. Elda returns. She felt bad about leaving them, especially since they saved her ass from her ship exploding. So they tie Lundi up, and Qui-Gon, he believes that the holocron made him go mad, and that when this is all said and done, he is probably going to really need some psychological help. And while this mission didn't quite go as planned, perhaps they'll find out the answers to their many remaining questions, such as, where is the holocron? Who had the holocron since Lundi didn't have it anymore? We're going to find this out in 10 years, Tim.
Okay.
10 years!
10 years from now, tomorrow night.
Yes.
And right now, 10 years later, we have Obi-Wan and Anakin, like last week, we're well into their partnership, and they've been called...
About 3 years.
Yeah, 3 years, maybe closer to 4. We'll get to that later. Mm-hmm. Anyway, 3.5, I think it was. Whatever, who cares? Okay. They're called off of a mission to report back to the Jedi Council. So they're on some other mission, and Anakin's pretty frustrated because he was enjoying that mission. He apparently was getting to do lots of mechanical stuff, that kind of thing. But Obi-Wan reminds him that whether or not the mission is fun doesn't matter. It's just, is it important? And so, interestingly, this meeting of the Council, all the Masters are present. So it's obviously something they take seriously. And so Yoda tells them that the Sith holocron on Kodai is generating some interest again around the galaxy. Obi-Wan is immediately taken aback. He's not taken aback, he's taken back to the trepidatious feeling that he had about that holocron. And he's thinking, Sith activity's obviously been on the rise since their official return in The Phantom Menace. And Obi-Wan is the only kind of living Jedi with any real knowledge of this particular holocron, of the planet Kodai, or of Murc Lundi, who Obi-Wan and Anakin are sent to see in prison. He's been sent to prison because of the plans he was making with the holocron. He's still there 10 years later, and he's currently in solitary confinement. So they're going to see him, Silence of the Lambs style, And I was saying it's actually
Something I want to add real quick
Yeah.
is that in this chapter they said that the Senate tried him. He was the crime that he was tried for was attempting to bring a great evil into existence
weird
in the
crime.
galaxy. Yeah, very weird. Crime.
Yeah, I don't know. It's some Minority Report type stuff, honestly. I mean, he's a crazy person and he's a bad guy, but okay. So this is a very Silence of the Lambs type thing, and I actually noted here it's actually more Manhunter style because Obi-Wan was involved in catching him in the first place. So it's like Will Graham meeting with Hannibal Lecter more so than Clarice, who is unrelated to Hannibal Lecter's crimes in the first place. And Obi-Wan is unrelated. is related to the crimes of Professor Lundy. But whatever. Lundy is still restrained. Actually, there you go. That's more Silence of the Lambs. Ha 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 ha. I'm jumping back and forth. Okay, so he's restrained still, and he goes on these days-long rants, and the guards hate him. He's not very happy to see Obi-Wan, and the feeling is mutual. But Obi-Wan knows that Lundy is the being with the most knowledge about this holocron, so he could be useful.
All right, so now chapter 14 here. I'm going to just read this whole chapter. It's only like 2.5 pages. Anakin took a small step forward, trying to see into the Quirman's eye. It was a difficult task since his head bobbed and weaved like a bird's. Anakin knew this had to be a symptom of insanity. As a boy on Tatooine, he had seen some of the street dwellers do the same thing. But this was different. Standing in front of Lundy's cell in the mental hospital, Anakin felt intrigued. There was something strong here, something powerful. Anakin noted how Lundy's uncovered eye narrowed to a dark slit as he glared at Obi-Wan. It burned with a fiery hatred. He had never seen anyone look at Obi-Wan like that. It was a little unsettling. Of course, Anakin would have chosen unsettling and interesting over boring any day. Today, someone had chosen it for him. Suddenly, Lundy lunged forward, thrusting his head and long Quirman neck between the bars. Anakin leaned back as Lundy began to rant about the holocron yet again. "Moons are rising, tides are turning," he rambled. One of his gangly arms waved in the air. "I knew you would not stay away. None have. They all come to me, crying, begging, screaming. Teach me, Professor. Show me the way. They think I have failed, but we know the difference, don't we?" He stared Obi-Wan down, but then went on, almost as if he were talking to himself. "Yes, of course we know it different. We know that I did not fail. I could not fail. I held the power in my hands. That different from failure. But then I was robbed by those... robbed thieves on a mission of peace. Here, Jedi, have a piece of this." Lundy's many shackled arms awkwardly thrust his food out of his cell, striking Obi-Wan in the face. Anakin looked at his master, expecting to see some sort of reaction, but Obi-Wan didn't flinch. He simply stood before Lundy's cell with a stoic calm. "We need your help, Professor," he said quietly, "to recover the holocron." Professor Lundy looked up, clearly surprised. His eyes widened and a smile stretched across his face, revealing 2 rows of decaying teeth. He put his face up to the bars again, and Anakin could smell his rancid breath. "At last, you Jedi have found the right path," he cackled.
So, yeah, I like your voice. I'm going to have to read some of him later, and I'm trying to remember what my voice was. I did it.
It was way lower. It was like way more scary.
We'll see.
I was going for the Blue Shadow Virus guy from Clone Wars.
Okay, yeah. That's
and
fair.
you know who voices him? That's the guy who plays Basil and Austin Powers. He was also in Logan's Run. I can't remember his name right now.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. Michael York. Duh.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Logan himself. Logan 5. Come on.
Yes.
He was in Gilmore Girls, too. He played a pervy professor at Yale. All right. Come on, Paris. You can do better. Don't hook up with your professor. Not your fault, though. He's taking advantage of her, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Let's have, there's already there are Gilmore Girls podcasts. Go listen to those. So, and quit this podcast. Obviously, we lost half of our dozens of listeners probably this week anyway. So,
oh, they're talking about Tarantino. I'm done.
Yeah, there's I can't handle, they're either so pissed at you in the way I was, or they're just this guy is insane. He's he's a crazy person. What is he doing? And by this guy, I mean me, by the way, guys. Okay, so
right, of course.
Whatever. By the way, we are never. I don't want to hear any of our listeners' opinions on the movie, positive or negative. We're putting this behind. So please,
flood us.
Flood
us, please.
No need. So anyway, chapter 15. Obi-Wan arranges for Lundy's supervised release, and so they make their way. They start to make their way to Kadai, and from his cell aboard the ship, Lundy mocks Obi-Wan's intention to retrieve the holocron in order to keep it safe from people like him. And Anakin lashes out about this. Obi-Wan tells him, and Anakin gets pissed. He's like, "Don't talk to my master that way." All this kind of stuff. And Obi-Wan tells him that he can handle petty insults. You need to calm down. So, Lundy goes silent and glares at the Jedi team from behind bars. Obi-Wan isn't really getting anything out of Lundy, any information, though he does suspect the professor might know more about the current whereabouts of the holocron than he's letting on. Then, Obi-Wan hears a voice, and I'm going to read a little bit here from page 94 and 95. And we'll talk a little bit about this, too. We're going to pause for a second on this.
All right.
Okay. "There were others, Padawan," it said. Obi-Wan let out a long breath. The voice was Qui-Gon's. His deceased master had always been there to help him, and still was, even in death. "Others were involved in Lundy's search for the holocron. Contact them. Perhaps Lundy told them something that would be of help to you now." Obi-Wan opened his eyes. "Thank you, Master," he thought as he sat up. Getting to his feet, he quietly left the room. He wanted to contact Jocasta Nu as possible. They had a couple days before the low tide on Kadai. There's no time to lose. Okay, so I thought it was interesting. How do you interpret that communication?
I don't communicate. It's not like a ghost. It's just
right.
It feels like that. Qui-Gon is present inside Obi-Wan's mind.
Is he just kind of reflecting on what would Qui-Gon have said in this moment?
Yeah, you could. I feel like you can
that's
go
how
both
I
ways.
read it.
Either,
but
right.
I don't believe that's how it's written, though. If that makes sense.
Okay.
I think it is written
sense.
as though it's okay. Jude is I've seen Star Wars movies. When Jedi die, they can still communicate with their at least with other Jedi in ghost form of some sort. And obviously this was written in 2002, so so we haven't gotten to Sith yet where it's revealed that Qui-Gon figures out how is kind of the first person to really figure that out. So,
right.
And not necessarily till that moment in time after Revenge of the Sith. So, I just thought that was interesting, something fun to point out. But
it'll be interesting to see if we see more of it.
Yeah, I'd be curious. I don't think we will, especially getting into the Jedi Quest series. Eventually, she probably got a screenplay for Sith and to go off of. So I would, but we'll see. Anyway, so at this point, Jocasta Nu, he contacts her. Tells Obi-Wan that both Amal and Deidre, if you remember, students of Professor Lundy's from the last book, are now living on the same planet, in fact, in the same apartment. And so Obi-Wan redirects the flight to that planet. When they knock on Amal's door, the guy he answers, and he looks like a shell of the enthusiastic young boy at Lundy's lecture a decade earlier. And Obi-Wan explains what they're doing there, and Amal goes crazy at the mention of the holocron. He's like going super Gollum-y and everything. So at this moment, though, Deidre comes home with groceries. She looks more normal. But she sees what's happening, and she takes Obi-Wan and Anakin into the kitchen. And I'm going to read again here from page 97. I am Obi-Wan Kenobi, Obi-Wan said, and this is my Padawan, Anakin Skywalker. Though he had seen Deidre at a lecture of Professor Lundy's, they had never actually been introduced. Your name is not important, Deidre replied. I know that you are a Jedi, and suspect that you are looking for the Sith holocron. Obi-Wan nodded. We wish to put it safely away. For good, he explained. A look of sadness spread across Deidre's face. That would be nice, she said. It has already done so much damage to so many. She glanced toward the living room. Obi-Wan knew she was not talking about the ancient tyranny of the Sith. Amal's mental state is fragile, she explained. It is best not to mention Lundy or the holocron in his presence. I gathered that, Obi-Wan said, feeling a twinge of guilt. Do you know what happened? Deidre turned away and began to unpack some of the groceries. It looked as though she was going to feed Amal a meal. I only know that he hasn't been the same since Professor Lundy's sabbatical 10 years ago, she said. Deidre pulled out some vegetables out of the bag and began to wash them. Obi-Wan noticed that her hands were shaking slightly, and she kept her eyes on what she was doing. And that is all you know? Obi-Wan asked, looking at her pointedly. Deidre sighed, and her hands dropped into the water basin. No, not all, she admitted. Obi-Wan waited patiently for Deidre to continue. 10 years ago, Amal followed Norval, another of Professor Lundy's star pupils, to Kodai. Norval was fixated on the holocron and had secretly joined one of the sects obsessed with obtaining it. He figured out that Lundy was going after it and decided the professor needed his help. Amal wanted to stop Norval from interfering with Dr. Lundy's attempt. He thought the kind of power Lundy was talking about would be too much for Norval to handle. Deidre switched off the water and turned toward Obi-Wan. I don't know what happened, but it was obviously too much for Amal, too. She said in a whisper, and since Professor Lundy has been institutionalized ever since, I guess it was too much for him, too. Obi-Wan was quiet for a moment, thinking. What happened to Norval? He finally asked. A tortured look came into Deidre's eyes. I don't know, she said mournfully, but the best I can hope for is that he is dead.
Whoa. Did you mention, I don't remember you mentioning, but the place, like the apartment, like really smells?
I didn't mention it, but yeah, like it's
okay.
not a great scene.
Right, and Anakin, he puts his like hand on his nose, like he verbally is like repulsed by it, and like Obi-Wan like shoots him a glare, like don't do that. That's not what a Jedi does.
Yeah, that's it. Also, that's just not what a decent person does. Anakin, like be discreet.
Right.
Also, Anakin,
right.
you grew up as a slave. I'm sure he encountered similar.
Right. You encountered insane people. You've had to have encountered smelly people.
I mean, he worked for Watto. Watto
streets.
Doesn't look like the most.
No, Watto doesn't.
I mean, also he dealt with
There's...
Sebulba all the time, spitting on him and all this kind of stuff.
There's smelly people all over Tatooine.
Tatooine has to be the smelliest planet, don't you think?
I agree. Yeah, it has to be just revolting. But, so something I'm noticing is that Anakin seems to do everything wrong, like putting his hand on his nose. That's not the Jedi way. However, Anakin finds it rude that somebody would wish death on someone. And Jude reveals here that a little bit on Anakin's feelings on death. And he's, when it comes to death, he feels that death is very permanent and final. And that sort of opinion, that sounds a little bit like a fear of death, a fear that will eventually lead him down a very slippery slope. So Deidre then tells them they didn't know it at the time, but Norval, the character who interrupted Lundy's lecture in the earlier part of the book, the same guy who tried to get on the ship when they tried to get on, he was studying Lundy's text, and he became obsessed with power. She claims that changed him. Now, Anakin, again, thinks this is odd because he feels he understands the feeling of wanting something. He wanted to win the pod race. He wanted to free Shmi. He wanted to be a Jedi. However, this thirst of wanting things can turn into fear of losing those things, which will eventually lead Anakin down a dark and slippery slope. So they hear a noise from the other room, and it must be Omal. So Anakin says, I'll go check on him. He finds the dude sitting in the middle of the floor, drool and snot covering his face. Anakin, he looks about the room, he finds some scrap paper, and he wipes him up. And for a second, Omal gives Anakin a grateful glance before returning to aimlessly rocking. So Anakin, he's feeling the urge. He's feeling impatient. He wants to move along with this mission. They've gotten all the information that they can possibly get from Deidre. And this impatience will eventually lead Anakin down a very slippery, dark slope.
All of Anakin's characterization in this book is foreshadowing. That's what it is.
I know.
Like,
you're
right about that. It's funny to keep pointing it out, but it's true. It is notable.
It is. So Anakin, he starts rooting through the junk in the room, and he finds a holo projector. It's broken, but since he is so resourceful, he fixes it. And the video appears, and it's fuzzy at first, but he quickly realizes that it's a Jedi with his lightsaber drawn, but he's quickly shot down by a blaster and dies. Troubled by this, he tries to shut the thing off, but the switch on it is broken, and it keeps playing the image over and over again. Ormal, he begins to mutter, "No, Norval, no!" He's like all freaked out by this. He's trying to he has to repair the device in order to stop it, and then when he does, he drops it to the ground. Very disturbed by this, but relieved it's over, he can't help but feeling that with these images he saw, that, they heard about these before, the council was talking about this, but he never saw them, but there's something familiar about this video. He heard about them, but something about seeing it makes him feel like he was there. Something about it makes him feel responsible for it. Now, Obi-Wan comes in and tells him, hey, the pilot called. Lundi started talking again, and he thinks there's some ruffians going around the hangar. So they decide we better get out of here. So on the way back, Anakin is not sure if he should tell his master what he saw. He feels guilty about it. He's guilty for snooping. He's guilty for not telling Obi-Wan about it. And he elects that, sometime I'll tell Obi-Wan about this. But he's too concerned about the mission right now, so some other time. And it's these guilt and these excuses that will eventually lead Anakin down a dark and very slippery slope.
So when they get back to the ship, Anakin immediately goes to check on the engine because the pilot is complaining about some problem with the engine. So Anakin goes and checks on that, and the pilot's relieved to see Obi-Wan because apparently Lundy's just been raving for the last half hour, and he's had it. He's had it. The pilot has had it, Levi.
I know. I would too.
Yeah. He does not sound like a fun guy to be around. And so Obi-Wan keeps trying to get him to talk, but he doesn't respond really at all. Like, he'll mention, I went to see Omal, and the guy is just not even registering. He's not even thinking of, he's like, that's one of his old students that's, really good, and, that one of his old students that's really good. Great. One of his former star pupils, And so, but, Obi-Wan kind of gets frustrated for the first time. And he starts to kind of show his desperation. And, again, I'm going to read a little bit here.
All right.
And Obi-Wan says, "We need to know if the holocron is still in the crater," he shouted. "We need to get it before..." Obi-Wan stopped himself. In his anger, he'd almost blurted out dangerous information. Having been locked up for the last 10 years, Lundi wouldn't know that the Sith had actually returned. He wouldn't know that others in the galaxy possessed the knowledge he'd sought. Lundy's tiny head tilted to one side. "You are afraid, boy. But not of my students," he said, leaning forward again. "No, there's something more. Something much
bigger, much more horrifying.
He spoke slowly, as if he wanted to make sure Obi-Wan caught every word.
The Sith!
He said, sitting back again. His eye widened, and Obi-Wan could see his large black pupil.
You are afraid of the Sith, of their return.
Lundi sat back and cackled loudly.
You should be!
He said. Obi-Wan gazed steadily at Lundi. He knew the professor wanted him to say something to acknowledge his fear. He wouldn't give him that satisfaction. The hold was completely silent for several long minutes as the two stared at each other. Finally, Lundi spoke.
I can tell you where the holocron is,
he said, sounding remarkably lucid.
I can even tell you how to get it. The question is, what can you do for me in return?
So, Lundi is master manipulator here. He is more Manhunter. He's actually affecting the situation in a direct way. He doesn't affect it as much in Silence of the Lambs, but in Manhunter, he figures out Will Graham's address, and he sends the Tooth Fairy Will Graham's address. It's fucked up. And now Lundy's doing similar stuff here. He's like getting involved. He's making deals, all kinds of shit. So
he is. Did you get to the explosion?
No, that chapter ends there.
Never mind. Okay. Anakin gets in the ship and says there's nothing wrong with it, despite the captain's claim that someone tampered with it. They take off, and boom, one of the engines explodes. Anakin fixes it, and they move along. Chapter 20. Chapter 19.
Okay, cool. I mean, some of these chapters are literally 2 pages that you had, especially at this point in the book, and then I got a couple 2-page chapters later on, and so we're going to have a couple of those. Anyway, so Obi-Wan...
They're the best.
Obi-Wan's concerned about Anakin's fascination with Lundi and Amal's kind of deteriorated states. He remembers being fearful of the Sith 10 years earlier himself, but Anakin seems curious. And, this disturbs Obi-Wan, of course. Perhaps this is because Obi-Wan witnessed Qui-Gon's... Maybe the difference is that Obi-Wan witnessed Qui-Gon's death at the hands of a Sith Lord, but Anakin's not as... Maybe the danger the Sith present isn't as present at the front of Anakin's mind. But still, his blasé attitude does disturb Obi-Wan. And they arrive on Kadai, and Obi-Wan kind of explains the history of the planet to Anakin. And Anakin actually makes some astute observations about the locals, that they don't seem very welcoming. There's not a lot of, even though it's mostly a water planet, there doesn't seem to be a lot of kind of sea life going on. People stay on the little patch of land where they are. And so, this observational skill impresses Obi-Wan. But, and so they kind of are having a nice little rapport, and finally Anakin's like, okay, well maybe it's time that I tell my master about the Sith ISIS video that I watched at Amal's apartment. and Obi-Wan's like, why didn't you tell me this earlier? And he's thinking, he's reflecting, he's like, okay, maybe I'm overreacting here, but this is pretty crazy. This is obviously very significant. Why wouldn't he tell me? And he's like, does Anakin trust me yet? He is not sure if they've built that kind of relationship yet, and he's like, do I trust him? They haven't fully developed that relationship that ultimately him and Qui-Gon, at least after the Melita Dawn incident, had together. That trusting relationship. It's not so much there yet between Anakin and Obi-Wan, and as we know from our knowledge of the series, it never quite gets there. Like, it's almost there in moments and not quite there. They never fully trust each other. This is, I assume, going to be a running theme for Jedi Quest. And so, They kind of, they return to the ship, though, and Obi-Wan kind of makes it clear to Lundi, like, it's time for you to tell me what you know about the holocron. And so, because they made a deal, basically, that the deal they wound up making is that he'll get to look at the Sith holocron. He'll get to get one last look at the Sith holocron, finally, if he tells them, what he knows. And so, so Lundi finally does tell them a little bit. He says that Norval, his student, found the holocron before him 10 years ago, back in the first part of this book, and that they fought over it. Lundi found him, and him and Norval fought over the holocron, and it fell into the geyser crater, the holocron. It's gone, basically. It went down. And this disturbs Obi-Wan because, that might mean that the holocron is just lost forever and no one can really retrieve it. But if someone was able to retrieve it, then it's still his responsibility, Obi-Wan's responsibility, to not let it fall into the wrong hands. So, chapter 20.
So, they load up a grav sled with diving equipment and the portable cage containing Lundi. They ride out onto the water, but are dismayed when they find a platform that has already been set up next to the submerged crater. So they put their diving gear on, and sure enough, they dive down, and they find a glowing red case. The glowing red case that's supposed to contain the holocron, but there's no holocron in it. They come back up and leave because they're pretty certain Norval has it. He beat him to the punch. So Obi asks Lundi, and, do you know where Norval could be? And Lundi refuses, claiming that their deal is null and void since he didn't get to see the holocron. But that's when Anakin has had enough, and he stops the grav sled, he turns around and he gets in Lundi's face, and he's like, you know history, and you know what'll happen if the Sith come to power again. The Jedi won't be the only ones killed. And that's how the chapter ends.
So Obi-Wan knows that he should reprimand Anakin for that outburst, but it actually seems to have been effective in shutting Lundi up for once. So Obi-Wan kind of appreciates the gesture, even though he knows he shouldn't. It's not the Jedi way. But his relationship, he reflects further on his relationship with Anakin. It's so different than his own relationship with Qui-Gon, and he kind of still questions whether or not he's actually cut out for being Anakin's master. This was really Qui-Gon's job, this is something that we will always be a subject of conversation. What would have happened if Qui-Gon had lived and all that stuff, and I think we'll be getting into that pretty deep in a couple weeks on our mailbag episode. I think we have a mailbag question about this, so I won't talk about it much now. But that's a notable thing, and this chapter reflects on that a little bit. So they return to the hangar to chase after Norval, because they assume he must have left recently. But their pilot has run off with their ship. And Anakin gets really pissed. He calls him a coward and all this stuff. And Obi-Wan's like, Jesus Christ, this kid. Relax. Relax. So, and so they both go looking for some clue as to where Norval might have gone. The only ship that's left in the last couple hours, left the hangar, in the last couple hours, was headed for the Plu sector. Which apparently is this huge sector of space. So they're looking for a needle in a haystack, but Lundi then pipes up from his cage because apparently they've been hauling him around in a cage. They say they reattach the cage to the wall or something. Whatever.
Yeah, it's odd. It seems like, I feel like his species is really large. So unless he's seated the entire time, that cage has to be gigantic.
Yeah, strange. But regardless, they needed him in scenes. I guess and he apparently has multiple arms, so it would have been hard to cuff him. I guess, but anyway,
it would. Yes.
Whatever. So, but Lundi pipes up from his cage and says that many people had offered him money for the Sith holocron over the years if he were to find it, and that Norval, and he was never going to give in to those offers, but Norval is a much greedier man than he was. So, and he says that one of the potential buyers of the holocron had wanted to meet him on Plu 2. And, Obi-Wan's like, this dude might be lying, but for once I sense that he's not trying to deceive us, and it is all we have. So they gotta get transport to Plu 2 right away.
So they need a ship. They need a fast ship. They find a pilot, and he's like, oh, I just landed. I need to get some sleep. And Anakin is all like, well, I can pilot the ship, and we'll bring it back to you. The pilot's like, oh, hell no, I'm not letting you take my ship. But then Obi-Wan pulls out a mind trick on the guy, and the guy is like, well, okay, you go ahead. I'll see you guys later. So that's some Qui-Gon Jinn kind of thing there. Yeah. That is like something Qui-Gon would do. That is off the rails.
It's a little too maybe abusing the power a little much, but
just a little.
I mean, they're returning the ship. It's like whatever. He seemed like he wasn't going to do much for the next couple days, but still.
But so anyway, they need a ship and fast. So they get a ship and they load Lundi in. They punch the hyperdrive. Luckily, they know from the manifest that Norval's ship was very large and very slow. So there's a good chance they'll catch up to him. While they wait, Anakin tries to meditate, but he can't help but watch Lundi. Lundi's asleep, but he's breathing very, very shallowly, almost like his life is ebbing. Anakin can't help but feel sorry for him. He's still a huge pain in the butt, but he still feels bad for the guy. When they exit Lightspeed, there's a ripple in the Force, and Obi-Wan feels it too. It's coming from a very large gray ship. They both agree, however, that whatever the ship is, whatever they're feeling, is not the holocron. It's something else very dark, so they better find Norval quick. Then another ship jumps out of hyperspace, and it creates some ripples of its own, but these are familiar, so it has to be Norval's ship. So they make a plan to use a smaller shuttle that's like inside their ship to board Norval's ship. So Obi-Wan is going to go and get in the smaller shuttle, and Anakin is going to prep their ship for exit. Obi-Wan takes off, he lands on Norval's ship, and as Anakin is in the cockpit, he hears Lundi suddenly mutter, "It's too late!" And he turns around, it looks like Lundi's sleeping, and then all of a sudden, the ship is rocked by a huge explosion.
So, Obi-Wan sees from where he is that Anakin's ship has been hit, and he wishes he had time to return and help his Padawan, but he knows he must stay focused on recovering the holocron. And he senses it he senses the presence of the holocron, much like Anakin did moments earlier. And again, I'm going to read a little bit here. So he's following this sense, and he approaches a room. So Obi-Wan approached the room carefully, but before he was through the door, the figure turned toward him. "I've been waiting for you," Norval said. He's Marvin the Martian, I guess, whatever. It was the first voice that came to me. Obi-Wan focused hard on the dark-haired man in front of him as queasiness threatened to overtake him. He sensed that, in fact, he wasn't the person Norval had been waiting for. He was expecting someone else. Lundi, perhaps. Or whoever was piloting the sleek gray ship. I am turning a page with one hand. Okay. So, "Powerful, isn't it?" Norval cackled. "The nauseous feeling takes some getting used to. When you are comfortable with the power, it disappears." It also sounds like Dr. Evil. I don't know what it sounds like. Fuck it.
A little bit, yeah. It's fine. Okay. It's fine. Yeah. Don't worry about it. Don't be self-conscious about it.
I'm very self-conscious for this record. I apologize to the listener. I've turned this into some sort of weird therapy session for me, and it's unfair to you. So
it's okay.
It's fine.
It's all okay.
Everything's fine. Obviously, everything's fine.
Just get it out, Tim. Get it out.
I'm sorry. People like the dramatic readings, and I'm fucking with it. Okay, so Obi-Wan dove for the holocron, but Norval quickly stepped in front of it. "This information would be wasted in the hands of a Jedi," he spat. "You have no idea what to do with the power." That got really Dr. Evil. Okay,
yes, it did.
Obi-Wan could see that Norval... Where's the should just be an Austin Powers podcast. Like, might as well be. We talk about it too much. Okay.
It might as we do.
Where are we? God damn it. Obi-Wan could see that Norval was not going to give up without a fight. Reaching down to his utility belt, he unhooked and ignited his lightsaber. I must end this quickly, Obi-Wan thought. He hoped the sight of his lightsaber would make Norval back down and hand over the holocron. I must get back to help Anakin before it's too late. But Norval did not back down. He simply reached down for his belt and ignited a lightsaber of his own. Fuck! This is the episode 1 trailer moment of this book.
It really is. So, back in Anakin's ship, he fires at the mysterious ship, but does little damage. Luckily, he hasn't taken any more damage since the initial blow. The damage was minor, but it did knock out the hyperdrive. So he's got to get away, and he decides to put Norval's ship in between him and the mysterious ship, hoping that since Norval's ship contains the holocron, they won't fire on it. So he ducks behind the ship. He quickly, however, finds out that he's wrong. The ship open fires on Norval's ship.
So, Obi-Wan is shocked by Norval's lightsaber. He assumes that it's kind of poorly made and shitty, and the crystal is weak, and all that stuff, but still, he assumes this guy has no real skill with the lightsaber, but he knows that he can't take an unskilled saber wielder lightly, because it might be more dangerous than a skilled person, because they're just flailing around. It's like how most gun deaths happen with, kids getting their parents' guns. Mm-hmm. That's why,
not stored properly,
not stored properly,
on the trigger.
Sold to, whatever. Guns are bad.
Safe.
I'm going to just alienate the rest of our listeners. Gun control is good. Okay, so, where why not? Where are we? Anyway, so yeah, Norval attacks him in these big, obvious ways. He makes huge swings at him, and he misses him by several inches. And but he does manage to kind of get Obi-Wan on the floor and corner him. But just when he thinks that he has Obi-Wan where he wants him, the ship gets hit by a stray laser from the battle outside, and he gets distracted for a second. Obi-Wan takes advantage, destroys Norval's shitty lightsaber, and grabs the holocron, runs off to help his Padawan. Norval is left going like, the Jedi has the holocron! Ooh! So yeah.
Alright, I'm going to just read chapter 26.
And I'll be reading chapter 27.
Nice. Lots of reading going on
fun.
This episode. Reading is good. Read the book.
Read the book.
All around him, doors began to slide closed. Obi-Wan hit the ground running, squeezing sideways. He was just able to make it through the door he had entered earlier and into the corridor. The last thing he saw was Norval laughing with him, a sneer twisting the lower half of his face. "You have no idea what you're up against," he shouted. Obi-Wan raced back down the white corridors to the shuttle. The glowing holocron cast an eerie glow on the walls. Obi-Wan ignored the queasiness in his gut and the weakness in his legs, but he had to get to Anakin. Within minutes, Obi-Wan was hurtling out of the shuttle bay in the tiny vessel. Pressing his face to the transparisteel,
Classic.
He scanned the space, looking for a sign of Anakin's ship, but he did not see one, nor did he see the gray vessel. The earlier laser fire had stopped completely. Obi-Wan sat down, discouraged. He was quite sure he had known if his Padawan had been killed, he would have felt it. But where was he? Obi-Wan programmed the shuttle to travel close to Norval's ship. He needed cover for as long as possible. The shuttle glided through space, around to the other side of Norval's ship. Still, Obi-Wan saw nothing. He was just about to give up and launch himself away when he spotted a small burrow craft sneakily hiding right next to Norval's vessel. Obi-Wan was relieved. The boy was smart. As soon as the shuttle had docked with the borrowed ship, Obi-Wan opened the door and hurried to the cargo bays. He had secured the holocron before he did anything else. He wanted someplace safe, as far away from Lundi as possible. Obi-Wan carefully placed the artifact in the onboard vault and was immediately relieved to have it on his hands. Something that I think is very funny here is that the ship has an onboard vault, which I assume would have a combination on it, which Obi-Wan somehow knows, and it's a borrowed ship.
Hey, when you're working on it with under 200 pages, you got to take some narrative shortcuts.
Right.
That's
yes,
one thing we've learned in this podcast.
Yeah, we sure have. But he knew he wouldn't be completely comfortable until it was safely locked away in the Jedi archives on Coruscant, and perhaps not even then. Obi-Wan rushed onto the bridge, eager to see his Padawan, but what he saw when he opened the door was so surprising it stopped him in his tracks. The professor's cage was empty, and its door hung open. Anakin sat on the floor. He was cradling Lundi in his lap. I understand now, Lundi said in a hoarse whisper. Some things are better left at the bottom of the sea. Lundi gasped for air, and Obi-Wan suddenly realized that the Quirman was dying. He stepped forward and looked briefly into his eye. He finally saw what he had always hoped. He had seen remorse and fear. I just hope it's not too late, Lundi finished. His fragile body shuddered and went limp. Anakin laid him gently on the floor. Dr. Murc Lundi was dead.
Oh.
Several emotions clashed inside Obi-Wan. Confusion? Frustration? Relief? Relief. Anakin turned to face him. I knew he was going to die, he explained, and I didn't think he should end his life in a cage, so I let him out. I thought it was the right thing to do. His face was full of worry, and Obi-Wan realized that it had possibly upset the boy with his outburst on Kodai.
What is this voice you're doing for Anakin?
It was me. I guess it was more. I guess I was channeling more Little Italy, Hayden. For whatever reason, between the two special edition books, as I read the first one, I was able to get like that Jake Lloyd kind of like whiny childlike voice, but this book definitely has like more of that Hayden tone.
I agree.
To it. He's not as.
He's getting older.
He is getting older. His voice. He's a growing boy. His voice is cracking. Come on. It's all right, Padawan, Obi-Wan said, placing his hand on Anakin's shoulder. He had much to learn as a Jedi Master, he realized, and it had taken him and Qui-Gon years of working together to develop their strong ties of trust. These ties would develop for him and Anakin as well, in time. As for Lundi, it didn't matter now. The Quirman and his evil were gone. Obi-Wan saw relief wash over Anakin's young face. I'm sorry about the hologram message, he said. I didn't mean to keep it from you. Obi-Wan nodded. I know, he said. I should have not reacted so strongly. Next time, we will both do better. I hope so, Anakin suddenly interrupted by a flash of blinding light, followed by an ear-splitting roar. The ship hurtled backwards as debris pummeled the exterior. Cut the power! Obi-Wan barked. Anakin raced to the controls and flipped the master switch. A second later, they were enveloped in darkness. If they were lucky, they would hurtle away with the flaming wreckage, unnoticed by the mysterious gray ship. Obi-Wan held his breath. He reached out to the Force and immediately felt that Norval was dead. The poor, clever student was wrong. Whoever was aboard the gray ship was not his friend. The blast had been intended for the Jedi, and whoever caused the fiery explosion had been willing to kill an ally to keep the Sith holocron out of the Jedi's hands.
All right, so Chapter 27. Not that terrible Jared Leto movie.
Not familiar with that one.
He plays Mark David Chapman. That's an exploitation of a real-life tragedy, that movie. But we won't get into that. So
anything with Jared Leto is an exploitation of a real tragedy.
Well, he's an exploitative figure. Chapter 27, the final chapter of Jedi Apprentice, as we know it, and we'll get into that in a little bit. after I read this. So, the ship docked in the Coruscant hangar, and Anakin and Obi-Wan disembarked. They drifted for hours while they patched the hyperdrive together. Even with Anakin's skills as a mechanic, they'd only just managed to limp the craft home. Now there was much to do. I will see about getting the ship back to Kodai, Anakin offered. Obi-Wan nodded. He had removed the holocron from the cargo bay and was eager to get it to its permanent home in the archives. He'd learned to ignore the nausea, but would never be comfortable around this kind of dark power. Come to the council chambers when you are finished, Obi-Wan said. I am sure the council will want to hear from us as soon as possible. Anakin nodded. And Lundi? He asked. I will have his body removed from the ship and brought into the temple. The council will decide what to do with him. Obi-Wan watched Anakin cross the hangar, then hurried to the Jedi Temple. Jocasta Nu was waiting for him, the safe for the holocron already open. They placed the artifact inside and sealed the door and lowered it into the archive vault. When the holocron was out of view, Obi-Wan sighed in relief. He hoped he would never have to see or touch that evil object ever again. By the time Obi-Wan arrived outside the council chamber doors, Anakin was waiting for him. The boy smiled broadly as the chamber doors slid open. Congratulations, Deepa Bilaba said as they stepped inside. A job well done. Indeed, agreed Saisi Tin. Do you know that?
No,
Okay.
I don't.
Whatever. Anakin's eyes were lit with excitement. It was a great mission, he said. The most exciting one yet. Obi-Wan noticed that Yoda's eyes registered concern as they rested on the boy, but the other council members seemed only pleased and relieved to have the Sith holocron safe in the temple archives. Make a mission great? Excitement does not, Yoda said gravely. The wise master looked over at Obi-Wan, and Obi-Wan felt a twinge of guilt. Did Yoda think he was failing as Anakin's master? Was he concerned that he was not capable of leading the boy? These were his own fears, of course. Qui-Gon had been such a wonderful teacher. He was brave, strong, and wise. A gifted leader. Would Qui-Gon think I am failing Anakin? That the boy needs an older and wiser master? Qui-Gon had been dead for almost 4 years. Yet Obi-Wan suddenly felt his master's presence. He was grateful for that, and took comfort in it. But sometimes he felt the loss so strongly that his chest ached. We will see that the remains of Professor Lundi are properly attended to, Mace Windu said. The mention of Lundy's name brought Obi-Wan back to the moment. Well done, Jedi, Ki-Adi-Mundi said, smiling. You may go. The other masters were nodding in agreement. As Obi-Wan followed his Padawan out of the chambers, several images flashed in his mind. Dr. Lundy's mad, contorted face, the crude drawing of the Sith holocron, the strange gray ship and its mysterious passengers, the holocron itself, and for a brief moment, the anger he'd seen in Anakin's eyes. These were just a handful of many signs he had seen on this mission, signs of things that would not easily be laid to rest. So that's the end of Jedi Apprentice, and we'll talk about the whole series next week. But I wanted to say, I really like this book.
This is a good book.
This is good.
This is a solid book.
It's very good.
This is definitely up there in terms of one of the better books.
No, for sure. I will say, not as good as the last book.
I agree. I'm going to just go ahead and spoil it now. I'm going to give this one 10 midi-chlorians.
You know what?
This one's...
why don't we just end this episode in harmony? We agree, 10 midi-chlorians. But I will also say that the reason it gets 10, as opposed to conceived in midi-chlorians, I would say, and I wonder if you agree with this, but I don't feel like... This feels like a preview. Deceptions felt like more like it was involving things from the series, from Jedi Apprentice. It felt more like a kind of culmination of things. This felt more like a preview of Jedi Quest to me. I don't know. Is that fair?
I agree, and especially because at the end of the fight within, they claim that this book is the conclusion to Jedi Apprentice, and this isn't like a conclusion really at all to Jedi Apprentice, and if anything, Deceptions is like more of a conclusion because the way it does culminate all of that information.
Yeah.
I mean, Bant's a main character in that book. Bant only gets like a brief mention in this book. The fact that she's with Kit Fisto.
We get Dan and Andra back together.
Yep, new returning characters. Yeah, this is not like this is its own story, and if anything, this is a Jedi Quest story. So
yeah, like honestly, the Qui-Gon stuff, the stuff that takes place in the Jedi Apprentice time frame, feels more like a prologue as opposed to with Deceptions. The stuff with Anakin felt more like an epilogue, and that actually is very deliberate. And I don't want to. I just maybe it's just. And at 10, obviously, is like an incredible book. I loved it. I thought this was great. This got me very excited for Jedi Quest. But in terms of, do I think Jedi Apprentice now? Now I don't know if I feel like Jedi Apprentice is a fully satisfying series. If that makes sense. Does like
that makes sense.
Like the series is satisfying on each individual book is satisfying. The individual arcs are satisfying. And obviously, I guess Phantom Menace is really the conclusion of that story in most ways. But I will say, like, I was hoping for maybe more of a kind of big thing to happen, because by the time you meet Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan and Phantom Menace, well, I mean, we'll talk more about this next week, but, I still thought this book was great, though. I really liked Professor Lundy. I thought he was a pretty cool villain, one of the better villains in the series.
He definitely was. He was better than Jenna Zan Arbor.
Yeah,
if we're going in terms of doctoring super genius villains.
Yeah, I mean, I liked the Jenna Zan Arbor arc, but
I do too.
Yeah, I mean,
not as good. The Jenna Zan Arbor arc is not as good as this book. They never got quite as good as these.
No. We'll talk about all the arcs next week, but
yes. Now, I do have one thing, and I guess this is I like this Wikipedia segment, but there is this isn't on Wikipedia, but we believe that there is a continuity error with this book, and it's the fact that Murc Lundi is a Corpsman, same species, of course, as Yarl Proof, but he's described as having multiple arms, which, if you know Yarl Proof does not have multiple arms. He's got 2 arms just like every other humanoid being. However, what I believe happened here is that Jude confused Corpsmans with Zextos. And Zextos are a much smaller species with multiple arms. The most notable Zexto, I think actually there's 2 Zextos seen in the movies. They're both in Phantom Menace, and it's Gascano is a Zexto. Okay. Yeah. And I believe the other Zexto is he's like selling like popcorn in the stands of the pod race. I'm pretty sure there's a
my
Zexto
favorite
there.
Pod racer to play. In the
I agree. He's my favorite pod racer too.
We're ending this episode in such harmony. What a great arc this episode has. I feel like now that I'm looking back on it,
I know. We just started in just pure chaos. We were at each other's throats. The dark side was everywhere, and we have felt the emotion, and we have let the emotion go, and we are in the light now.
Hey, we laugh, but that is part of what the appeal of Star Wars is, and why I balk at the Acker and Blacker bullshit from a few weeks ago. Of like fuck the Jedi and all this stuff, and why I balk at these Sith people, these people that love posting the Sith code on Facebook and all that shit. Like, is that part of the appeal of Star Wars is that it is just good basic moral philosophy, and it's a good direct way to teach that kind of stuff, and it's good. So yeah, helps you in your real life.
Yes, it is. It is. Something else. You mentioned who is Seiss Tin. He is one of the 4 Jedi who went to confront Sheev Palpatine in his office in Revenge of the Sith. Yeah.
Okay, so it's
the other 3.
It's Mace Windu, Kit Fisto, Plo Koon. Am I right?
No, not Plo Koon. The other one is Ajan Kolar. Kolar. He is a Zabrak, the same species as Darth Maul.
That guy.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
I don't remember him being there either, but apparently he was.
Somebody should write something about him, because now with all the Clone Wars stuff, like, his species is kind of an interesting situation.
Yeah, he's actually apparently, I'm looking now on his page, he's only in one episode of Clone Wars. Actually, he's just a vision of Yoda's. He doesn't get any more character beyond that,
well, hopefully
which is surprising.
Well, maybe he'll be in season 7 of Clone Wars. Which we're not getting until February, March?
Yeah, February. Yep.
Sorry, guys, if you wanted a good D23 discussion, but whatever. I figure if you really were excited about D23 stuff, you read everything and listened to other podcasts and stuff already. So
yeah, listen to other podcasts that's their focus is just all the Star Wars news. Speaking of Star Wars news, we actually had some news drop while we were recording today, Tim.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Actually, no. I guess we have two things.
Okay.
I'll do the first one, and then you do the second
news?
one. Some real news, yeah. The Star Wars show dropped a new episode today, and they were discussing the Obi-Wan show, and the host just dropped out of nowhere that the Obi-Wan show takes place 8 years after Revenge of the Sith.
Oh, that was in the press conference or whatever.
Oh, it was?
Yeah, you might just missed it. There was a lot of news. Disney flooding the market of all news.
Fool, then. Yeah. Yep. Well, then.
But 8 years. That's
Luke 8.
That's the exact midpoint, and that seems about right. Because honestly, Alec Guinness looks about 30 years older than Ewan does in Sith. So, and it's been about 15. It'll have been about 15 years when the series premieres. So it's perfect. That's the midpoint of how old he actually looks, and that's the actual midpoint in the timeline.
That feels good, and I hope we get a small child playing a young Luke Skywalker.
I think we're gonna.
I'm sure that kid's life will probably be ruined by the show. Maybe a little like Jake Lloyd.
Well,
but,
I hope. Okay, let's not. Maybe he won't have much of an actual role.
I'm not hoping for that.
I bet,
but
yeah. First of all, obviously you're not hoping for that. I don't want to, but I don't know. I think we're gonna get something. We'll see how big a role that he'd have. I think he might be more kind of in the background. I think Owen, hopefully they announce Joel Edgerton soon. I think Owen will be a big part of the show. But
I'm sure, for the fact that Luke knows about crazy old Ben means that Luke has to have some sort of interaction with him, which will be very interesting when that happens.
This could be the last moment before Uncle Owen's I don't want you talking to that crazy old man. What caused that? Right. So that's an interesting story. There's many things they could do. I hope it doesn't leave Tatooine. That's my only,
right.
That's my thing.
Oh, also, one final thing. I'm looking at my tabs here before you drop your huge piece of news. It's really big. This is not Lundy's only appearance in the Legends canon. Actually, he's shown up in some other things. Most of them are just mentions of him, but he's also showed up in the Attack of the Clones Illustrated Companion, the New Essential Guide to Alien Species, Evil Never Dies, The Sith Dynasties, which is an article that was exclusive to StarWars.com, but has been since removed.
Sure, you can find it on archive.org.
Yep, Jedi vs. Sith, The Essential Guide to the Force, Complete Star Wars Encyclopedia, and The Essential Reader's Companion. So they treat Murc Lundi was popular enough that he's an in-universe
historian. You could reference him in reference books like that. That makes sense.
Big news.
Huge news. So, at D23, of course, huge movie star was there promoting, I guess, Eternals and Maleficent 2. Angelina Jolie. And she
Who are you talking? Who is that?
You don't know who that is? Yeah, I mean, it's been a long time, I guess, since she's not in movies that much anymore. It's shocking. She has 2 movies on the horizon, both crazy Disney tentpoles, whatever. But anyway, so she was on their red carpet or whatever and was asked who her favorite Star Wars character is. And guess what her answer was, Levi?
What was it?
That's a terrible impression. It's Salacious Crumb. She said, she didn't say Salacious Crumb, she said Jabba's little friend. But
Yeah, the
I
one
thought
who
that was
laughs
cool.
like anytime he murders someone. Yeah, I thought that was funny too, because that goes to show she's like actually watched the movies. And,
yeah,
like,
she might not be
actually
a
got
huge
kick.
fan or whatever, but she's
Right.
She's watched them. Obviously, she's watched them. They're also like crazy popular. I mean, come on.
Right.
And I know
Right,
also
but that means-
actually she got like that. You know how the Academy gives out those like humanitarian like lifetime achievement awards like at the governor's awards or whatever. It's the same. They gave one to her, and guess who presented it? George
wow.
Lucas. That was so weird to me. I was like, "What do they have? Like what?" Like I had never even thought of them in the same sentence, but apparently they. I mean, I'm guessing a lot of her work's done. She adopts people and kids and stuff, but I'm sure a lot of her work's done with like education around the world and stuff, which is obviously George's main thing. So
Right.
That's
there's photos of the two of them together.
Oh, you're looking right there.
I'm looking. Yeah. There's
wild.
actually one where there's actually a very interesting one I'm looking at. I'll post this online. But George, I think, is handing Angie the Oscar, but his hand is on it and her hand is on it, and you cannot tell who is taking or receiving the Oscar.
Well, yeah, use that in our episode photo. But anyway, so yeah. Anyway, this is another very long episode. Not as long as last week, but probably far more unlistenable. So I'm sorry.
No,
it's fine. It's fine. Again, please do not send your comments about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood to us. I don't want to know positive, negative, neutral. I don't care. Apparently, any conversation about this movie is fraught, and I need to just enjoy it personally and privately and relax. So, regardless, next week, big stuff next week. We're doing our big wrap-up show for Jedi Apprentice, and we're going to talk a little bit about Claudia Gray's Master and Apprentice, which is a new canon novel that came out earlier this year.
Some business we need to discuss is what list are we doing? I think we should have this. I think we should each rank the books. So, like, we just rank all 20 books in order. We spout off which order we go in. We discuss that. You good with that?
Let's rank books, and then I think we should have a top 5 guest characters, quote unquote. So not the main characters of the series, including like Tall or Bant or whatever, but like the characters that are like 1 or 2 book appearances. They could be villains, They could be fun people they encounter along the way, that kind of stuff. And then just, I think we can just talk in a more general way.
We should do a top 5 worst.
We could, yeah. We'll talk about the worst. We'll figure all this out offline. But expect plenty of lists.
Lots of lists. We love lists.
And yeah, we're going to talk a little bit also about Claudia Gray's Master and Apprentice. So if you guys read that earlier this year, I know that was a big deal when it came out. We're finally going to give our opinion about that. And, I got to get that from the library tomorrow. Jesus Christ. So, get started on that. I just started at school this week, guys. So if you remember the earlier days of this podcast, get ready for that. You're going to get crazy Tim. So anyway, there's that. That's what's happening next week. And then we got the Q&A. Guys, we're recording those the next 2 episodes together. So if you want a question answered on our big...
Get it in
in by probably next Thursday. At the very latest. We might even be recording before that, but definitely the absolute latest will be Thursday night. We're probably recording Wednesday, but whatever.
Right. So you can send those to Padawan Library at Gmail. You can private message us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Subscribe to those. Like to those, YouTube. Whatever. Find us on Spotify, Stitcher, iTunes. Rate and review us on all of those, but mostly just iTunes because that's the only one people cares about because Apple rules the world. And finally, one last thing before we close the library, Tim. I want to wish you a very happy birthday.
Oh, thank you.
That's right. That's right, younglings. We have a birthday in the library today. It's actually this Saturday.
Tomorrow,
it'll be the day after.
This,
yeah. Oh, okay, yeah. It's the day after this episode drops, Saturday, so send him a birthday wish.
If you want.
And I think he'll appreciate it.
You know what? I'll need it. And, on Sunday, I'm going to see Lawrence of Arabia and doing karaoke. I'm going to have a good birthday. So,
what song you singing? Do you know what you're singing yet?
We're doing the private karaoke room, so I'll be singing tons of songs. I don't know. I'm probably going to be a loser and do like a Counting Crows song, subject my friends to that. So the, it's my birthday, so whatever. So anyway, join us next week.
Until the books are due back.
There you go. The library is closed. Padawan Library is hosted and produced by Tim May and Levi Peretic. It is edited by Tim May. Our theme song is by the Astral Project. Our artwork is by Freddie Funbuns. Padawan Library is copyright 2019 by Tim May and Levi Peretic. All rights reserved.